What is up, Ravens Flock? Huge shout out for your support for the 410 Sports Talk. James and Glenn are the best in the business. Make sure you go subscribe to their channel. Let's go Ravens. Big trust.
Welcome in everyone to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm Glenn Martin here with my co-host James Haskell. And we're back for another exciting episode. This is going to be really the first in our 10-part series of position battles heading into training camp. We're roughly a month away from training camp starting. So we're in this episode, we're going to be discussing the safety position, which in my opinion probably has the most intrigue surrounding it because of how many safeties were already on the team. And of course, the additions with Marcus Williams in free agency and Kyle Hamilton in the draft. They brought in some pretty big names already to a crowded and talented room. So that's where we wanted to start our position battles with the safety position. But Jimbo, do you have the full list in front of you, or would you like me to give you the current depth chart of safety?
Yeah. Hit us with the current depth chart, Glenn. And that will allow me to then set the stage for me to get on my soapbox and talk about this.
Okay. All right. So currently in the building at safety, we have rookie Kyle Hamilton. We have Chuck Clark, Geno Stone, Tony Jefferson II, Marcus Williams, Brandon Stevens, and Ardarius Washington.
Nice.
So
how many is that? Is that six?
That's six. That's quite. Actually, it's seven. I'm sorry. That's seven. Okay. So right now they have seven safeties in the building. Just to give reference points of what they've done in the past. In 2019, they had six safeties on the board. Now, I mean on the depth chart, but some of the my light just fell, and it took out my cup of pens. Took that with it. That just all over the floor.
At least it was just pens.
That's true. It was. Oh man, that's nice. And the light's still lit, just on the ground now. But some of those safeties that they had were clear in a way special teams contributors,
Sure.
And so while they were listed at safety, didn't do a whole ton of safety. But in 2019, they had six safeties. 2020, they kept five safeties. Last year, six safeties again. So right now, there's seven currently listed on the depth chart.
Now,
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, now one thing to keep in mind, while he's currently listed as a safety, I'm pretty sure Brandon Stevens will be taking a lot of reps at corner this year.
Good point. Yep.
So that's something to keep in mind, and that was something that was.
So you think he'll be listed as in the cornerback room?
I think eventually it could come to that, but he's going to be doing a lot of corner stuff this year, according to John.
Yeah.
And I think the kid's got all the talent for it. Think about this. He's a second-year player. Even if he's moving to corner, he already has a knack for the speed of the NFL and things like that. And so he'll have a jump start or a head start on the new rookies coming in. Even though he didn't play corner last year, he still played DB, still played man coverage, like in scenarios and things like that. So yeah, I think Brandon will more be a corner. But the other thing I want to mention, so what you're saying with your historical data though, is that six is the max. We're most likely not going to have seven safeties. It would be unprecedented.
That's a fair way to put it. It would be unprecedented, not impossible, but unprecedented. Yes.
Right. So,
and you know what's interesting, Jimbo? You mentioned the Stevens as a corner. So when I look at depth chart,
that's what I was going to ask.
It shows Stevens as a safety, but when I go look at roster, it has Stevens listed as a corner.
Okay, and then are you able to see how many corners do we have right now?
Yeah, currently on the team, let's see. Armour Davis, Kyle Fuller, Marlon Humphrey, Robert Jackson, Iman Marshall, Marcus Peters, Kevon Seymour, David Vereen, Damarian Williams, Denzel Williams, Brandon Stevens, 11 currently listed on the roster.
Holy heck. That is an insane amount.
A lot of DBs, man. Lots of DBs. Yeah, so I'm going to put 10 corners right now, but it's really 11, and it's kind of like 6 with safeties with Brandon Stevens. So it's obviously a combination. It's going to be a combination of corners and safeties that fill out the DB room, and I think they look at those two positions as more of one, as a DB group, instead of two separate positions. So of course these two are going to work together. But
Yeah.
for the sake of this video, let's try and
Yeah, we'll
limit
stick
it
to
to
the
talking,
safeties.
of
Yeah.
just safeties, because we
As
will have
far
a
as the
separate
number
video.
goes, as far as the number goes, it's important to know because the overall depth will depend on one another, like you said.
Mhm.
So using that for reference, I think is good for the sake of this video. But like you said, we'll keep it to safeties. And I have a hunch here, but I'm just gonna give you my hunch and let you know what you think. So I don't know how everything shakes out. I have an idea, but I don't think there's any way that Chuck Clark is not a starter in week 1.
Okay.
I think that trotting out on the field, if we don't have 3 safeties, and if there's only 2, I think it's Marcus. I think it's Chuck Clark. I know that our number 1 overall pick for the Baltimore Ravens was Kyle Hamilton, who's an All-American, who's an incredible physical talent and things like that. But Chuck is light years ahead of this guy from a mental standpoint. And it's no knock on Kyle if he doesn't start day 1. Glenn, you said it before. A lot of people don't know this. The best draft pick in Baltimore Ravens history, most likely, is probably Jonathan Ogden if you look at his resume work. Now, you can say Ray, you can say Ed, but honestly, like, Jonathan Ogden has a serious argument, right? He's potentially the best of all time in his position. Like, he's definitely in the conversation.
Yep.
Absolutely dominant his entire career. Even Jonathan Ogden didn't start his first game at left tackle.
All right.
So if that's the truth, why can't it be the truth for Kyle Hamilton? I think that when we drafted him, I thought there's no way he doesn't start, but I don't think it's a disrespect to him or a knock on him to transition him in and let him be the third guy. I think everyone's plugging Chuck in as like the gadget guy, right? The guy that they plug. I think it's going to be Kyle, at least at the beginning, maybe the first half of the season, that of the 3 gets the smallest amount of reps. Not because he doesn't have the ability, but because Chuck is so far ahead.
Yeah, light years.
You know what I mean? And there's nothing that Kyle can do about that except continue to rep it out.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that is something that might take people by surprise. And some people might say, well, why did we draft him 14 if he's only playing 20% of the defensive snaps or whatever the case may be? But I think that that's something important to remember in this battle throughout the offseason. I think Chuck comes out the starter if you're in a 2 safety set, if you will.
Well, I think that the snap counts for both of those guys can be extremely high.
Yeah, it definitely can. And equal, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, but I think you're 100% right in saying that Chuck Clark is going to play an absolute ton. And we've heard Chris Hewitt when asked about the green dot, because of course Kyle Hamilton was wearing the green dot during rookie OTAs, but it's because someone had to be out there, and there wasn't a ton of veterans in the building during the OTAs outside of a select few. And when they asked Chris Hewitt about that, he said that basically said there's not going to be a rookie wearing the green dot. So who's the most likely to wear the green dot is Chuck Clark, and he's not going to be wearing it if he's going to be spending most of his time sitting on the sideline. So I think that you're 100% right that there's going to be I think there's a ton of snaps this year. There are going to be three safeties on the field, a ton of snaps. Like I would be willing to venture as high as 40% of the snaps, or even higher than that, are going to have all 3 of those guys on the field because of the versatility that they bring. I think that Kyle Hamilton is such a chess piece that he can be used in so many different areas that they'll find a way to get him on the field, even if it isn't the traditional safety role. And I think Chuck Clark brings some versatility as well to the position, and he'll be deployed in many different ways. But let me just see. Last year, if I look at the safeties and kind of how often they played, Brandon Stevens played almost 70% of the snaps, but Chuck Clark played almost 95% of the snaps, Jimbo. So they're not going to take a guy who played 95% of the snaps and stick him on the bench somewhere, or even trade him, because he's just too valuable to the Ravens. He's probably more valuable to the Ravens than he will be to any other team because of the experience that he already has here and the help he can be to the young guys.
Yeah, I think, and the reason I'm glad we're talking about this for a sec, even though really the position battles will come down to the back half of these guys, but this is important because I fell into the group of people that immediately said, "Oh, well, Chuck Clark is dispensable. Oh, well, Chuck Clark is coming off the bench," right? Like whatever that is. It was stupid, and it's just think about it for a second. It's not. I'm sorry, it's not happening. He's too valuable. He's too versatile. He's too much of a leader. He's too productive, right? Like, forget about all of Chuck's intangibles. He's a productive NFL safety, right?
Yep.
And I don't, like I said, I don't think it's a knock on Kyle. If he ends up being the one that, if there is a slight in snaps, it'll be him. But I agree with you that all of them are going to play a ton because of McDaniel's system and their interchangeability
McDonald, but yeah.
or McDonald. Yeah. So the interchangeability of the roles and the positions back there, trying to play this positionless defense, if you will, for lack of a better term. But I just wanted to get that out there because I'm not in the camp that Chuck is gone. I don't think there's any way he's traded. I'm not in the camp that his snap count is going to decrease. If it decreases, it will not be substantial. Maybe marginally, but I see it very marginally, and I think he'll be a huge contributor this year. This year, ladies and gentlemen.
Well,
this year.
And just to kind of double down, I was looking at the game by game snap counts for the safeties last season, and I looked at Deshaun Elliott, and then I quickly bounce over to Brandon Stevens, and surprisingly enough, in game five, Deshaun Elliott played 100% of the snaps. And also in game five, Brandon Stevens played 100% of the snaps. So even before the Deshaun Elliott injury, those guys were playing like crazy together. And and by the way, in game five, Chuck Clark played 100% of the snaps. So in game five, when they were all three healthy, they all three played 100% of the snaps. So it is absolutely reasonable to imagine that you take Deshaun Elliott out of the equation, you put in Kyle Hamilton, and you take out, unfortunately for Brandon Stevens, he's going to lose a lot of snaps to Marcus Williams. And, they paid Marcus Williams a ton of money. So I think you unfortunately for Brandon, you're going to have to take him out of that safety role. Obviously going to pick up more run as a corner. But I think there's going to be a lot of games where all three of them play 90 to 100% of the snaps together.
Yeah.
So those three are locks, right?
Right. So all I'm saying is don't fool yourselves, right?
Okay.
Like, whatever the depth chart is, all three of them are playing an insane amount of football. So yeah, obviously they're locks. I want to, if you'll bear with me here, Glenn, I have one more guy that is a lock, and I've talked about him before, and I think I think he will come off as a bit surprising to people, but I'm booking it right now. Tony Jefferson II is a lock for me.
Okay.
Tony is a lock for me because, like I said before, I've just been thinking about Tony a lot in the way he ended the season relatively strong. He's got another year under his belt, another offseason under his belt where he's coming back from injury and he's getting healthier. I think Tony's looking for a bounce back year. He knows what type of player he's been in the past. I think he still has a lot of tread on the tire. I don't think he's as worn as people think he is. And he knows the system. He knows the team. I think Tony Jefferson, to me, is a lock on this depth chart. I think camp will show that. But he's a smart football player. He's a savvy player. He's physically gifted. He's physically gifted. Everything above. So I think Tony Jefferson is a lock to make this team.
Okay.
What about you? How you feel about Tony?
I like Tony. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, just making sure. Yeah, I like Tony. I think Tony is a guy that look, there's not too many guys they bring back. And so if they bring you back after you left, I think that means something about who you are as a teammate and obviously as a player. And I think that they love having Tony Jefferson around. And all the reports I've been hearing from the position coaches coming out of the OTAs and in the mini camp is that Tony looks like old Tony. He looks like the Tony that was here in Baltimore before the injuries and before he spent some time in San Francisco with the Niners. I would love to see Tony really take hold of a role here. Now, I think he's certainly going to be the fourth guy at best. And if you count Brandon Stevens, then I think it pushes him down to maybe the fifth guy as far as snap count and total impact. But man, Tony Jefferson is still he's a monster box safety, and he's a tackling machine. And I think, any Ravens fan knows the plight of tackling that they went through last year. And so if you can get a guy like Tony, you can come up and support the run in a division like this, that's got some monster running backs with Mixon and Harris and of course
Chubb.
the two in Cleveland with Chubb and Hunt. I mean, you need a safety who can come up and certainly play the box. So I agree. I think Tony Jefferson does make this team, and I think they'd be they're going to get more than just what he does on the field. They're going to get a lot in the practice room as well as in the weight room and just setting the culture. So I think Tony is as well. Now, the big thing for me is I'm so unsure about a guy like Geno Stone because, look, I remember that he has negative length. I remember that his physical measurables aren't spectacular. But what I also remember is that when this guy gets on the field, he just seems to make plays. I mean, he doesn't get the run that a lot of these other guys gets, but when he does, he seems to get his hand on the ball. He seems to, make a big tackle. He just seems to make a play that forces you to notice and say his name. But at the same time, I got this Ardarius Washington, who I'm excited about, who's a young guy who, again, has a nose for the football, had some injuries and a little bit of bad luck and a bit of a log jam in front of him. But Jimbo, how do you pick? Because they're both young, so it's not like, well, this guy's got more runway.
Right.
How do you pick between Geno Stone and Ardarius, or do you think both of them have a shot at making it?
I think both of them have a shot at making it with Brandon being moved to corner. But even that, you're still talking about 10, 11 corners, and the Ravens have to make decisions there, right? So I think they both have a shot. I think what it really comes down to is who is more likely to get through the practice squad and be able to be leveraged on the practice squad. And so with that in mind, I think Geno's the guy if you have to pick between the two. I really like Ardarius. I also really like Geno. He seems more athletic than people give him credit for. He seems quicker than people give him credit for. Definitely laterally in his ability to cover ground, even though he has the negative length. But like you said, is something interesting about him and Tony in different ways. Sometimes it's really hard to teach instincts. It's also sometimes really hard to quantify instincts. But as soon as you see it, you're like, oh, there it is. You know what I mean? You don't have to ask a guy, oh, why did you do that? I just felt it. It just made sense, right?
Yep.
Like, just kind of is what it is. That's why Ed Reed, you don't just duplicate. They don't grow on trees, right? Football instincts are gifts, and sometimes you have them, sometimes you don't. I think that Tony is instinctually gifted. I think that Geno is instinctually gifted. But so I think it's Ardarius is the odd man out and ends up on the practice squad. I don't think the Ravens are done with him by any stretch of the imagination. I think they want him here. I think they like what they saw. We saw a few plays last year in the preseason where he found the football. But I think if I had to pick between the two, I think I'd want to rock with Geno, man. He's just shown a bit more on the field in the regular season.
Yeah, and he's also shown that when cut, he has been picked up before.
Exactly, right. The Texans picked him up, right. So don't want to lose a guy.
Right. Yeah, that has the knowledge of your system. I think Tony is the obvious backup to the box safety, and I think Kyle Hamilton is the obvious backup everywhere. But then Brandon Stevens would be the most obvious backup to Marcus Williams in that he played a ton of deep safety when Deshaun Elliott was out. So, it's like, where does Ardarius fit in? And it could come down to who's the better special team player between Geno and Ardarius. But if it comes down to who's, what's been done on the field, it's not that close because Geno has just done far more and he's had more opportunity. He's been around longer. So, that part's a little unfair for Ardarius, but sometimes it comes down to, like you said, the numbers, who you think you can squeeze through the waivers and get through to your practice squad. And with Ardarius's lack of size and lack of on-field impact to this point, I think you're right that he's the most obvious one that they could slide through and hope to retain as kind of their 54th man in case there was a rash of injuries. But the interesting thing to me is the fact that Brandon Stevens is listed as a free safety on the depth chart, and on the exact same website on the roster, he's now listed as a corner. It could come down to if they just switch Brandon and they keep 6 safeties like they've done 2 of the last 3 years, they could keep everyone, but then that means they go light at corner. And of course, we're going to talk about the cornerback room and have a video separate on that topic itself, but man, the safety battle is, and of course, we're also saying this with the fact that we understand there could be an injury. And if there's an injury, then that opens the door for a guy like Geno or Darius to step in because Tony Jefferson's had a year injury. And then nicks and bumps and bruises have plagued, all these guys, I'm sure, at one point or another in their career. So there is that opportunity that an injury could open the door. But if they're all healthy, I think you're right. I think Ardarius is kind of going to be on the outside looking for some help to get in. 100%.
100%. So, and I'm interested to see how this one plays out. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. There's a lot of storylines, so make sure you guys take a look at it. I think when you're watching camp, when you're hearing about camp, listen to them talk about Kyle Hamilton's development. Listen to them talk about Geno maybe making a player here or there. Obviously, our Darius could be a standout, but also, like Glenn said, Brandon playing corner and that the percentage of which he's playing corner and safety will also be an impact on each of those rooms. So let us know what your guys' thoughts are. Leave all your comments below, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
See you.